Their allegiance was to the church, not to the victims.
First tonight, changes could come to an Ohio law concerning victims of child sex abuse. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tanya O'Rourke.
And I'm Craig McKee, an Ohio state lawmaker now voicing support for reforming the statute of limitations on civil cases concerning this very issue.
It does follow the Nine on Your Side I-Team's Culture of Silence investigation, which released last week. Our investigators showed the local Catholic Church continues to conceal information about priests publicly accused of sexually abusing children.
A Green Township Republican says that he wants to encourage more transparency from the church. But as investigative reporter Dan Monk learned, his new ideas likely won't go far enough to satisfy everyone.
When Ohio lawmakers last revised the statute of limitations for child sex abuse 13 years ago, Bill Seitz was in the middle of the action.
I wrote the law in 2006.
Now, Seitz says he'd like to revise that legislation after learning from the I-Team that a Columbus judge declared it unconstitutional in 2010. Judge John Bender objected to the creation of a civil registry system that would have required priests to be publicly named if a court ruled there was enough evidence to hold them liable for the alleged abuse.
The court did not take issue with the registry. The court took issue with our creation of a criminal penalty.
Seitz wants to replace the criminal penalty with a civil fine. He says it will make the law constitutional, but he doesn't expect it to be used.
I suspect, both then and certainly now, that it actually is about the money. They're looking for a significant payday.
Marcy Hamilton says Seitz is wrong on both counts. She's CEO of Child USA, a Philadelphia nonprofit that lobbies for policies that reduce child abuse and neglect.
You can't put someone on a sex offender registry unless you get a criminal conviction.
Hamilton is a widely regarded constitutional scholar and a former law clerk for Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. She says Ohio's civil registry system was very poorly thought out.
It was a very cynical response to the victims quite sincerely saying, it's not really about the money for us. We want children to be safe.
You saw the same behavior with state senators, state representatives. Their allegiance was to the church, not to the victims.
Christy Miller lobbied Seitz for statute of limitations reform in 2006 after her lawsuit against the church was dismissed.
Watching the lobbying firm for the church justify their ability to, well, the statute is over, and not own up to any of it, even though they knew it was wrong, and justify it by the law, was the hardest thing to watch.
Miller and Hamilton want lawmakers to scrap the civil registry idea and replace it with a 3-year look-back window that would let victims file lawsuits over abuse that happened decades ago. Seitz didn't like the idea in 2006 and still doesn't today.
I think we're basically just opening the window for lawsuits that will bankrupt institutions that have done and continue to do a lot of good in our community.
Seitz says he would support reforms that encourage more public disclosure about child sexual abuse, but he doesn't support changes to the current rule that requires victims to file civil lawsuits before they turn 30.
I think by the time you're 30, you have a pretty good picture of where your life is headed, okay? And allowing people to wait until they're 50, all right, it to me runs the risk of having all of those things that might have gone wrong between age 30 and age 50 being incorrectly imputed back to something that happened when they were 10.
Folks who are victims deserve to be heard and deserve to pursue their case, regardless of the timeline.
Representative Bridget Kelly is a Democrat representing Ohio's 31st House District.
Through your stories, particularly, there's a long line of justice delayed and of inaction on the part of the church.
The Archdiocese of Cincinnati says it has no position on the statute of limitations and declined to answer further questions. Right now, there are 2 bills pending in Columbus that deal with statute of limitations reform. Neither of them are scheduled for a vote. Dan Monk, 9 on Your Side.